So these two things are coming down the track pretty fast. Now, flipping back to the central bank digital currency, it's not a cryptocurrency. It's not on a blockchain. A blockchain is just a ledger. They've been around since the 80s, no big deal. But this ledger will be maintained by somebody, probably the Federal Reserve. But, there could be a new government agency doing it. It's kind of like a bank account. So we might quickly end up in a world where, I have an account at a bank. You guys have accounts at banks. Well, those banks are either members of the Federal Reserve System or they're smaller banks that are correspondents of bigger banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo. I haven't helped you with Wells Fargo. But the point being, the banks kind of keep all the books. We might be in a world where you would have an account at the Fed. Everyone listening would have an account at the Fed. We'd have it on our iPhone or our Samsung or whatever our mobile phone is. And if I send you money, the Fed takes it out of my account and sends it to your account. End of story. Kind of like a Venmo type of thing with, larger denominations, etc. That has implications in terms of disintermediating the banks. Like if you can do that, which you can technically, who needs banks? But the selling point is, well, it's better, faster, cheaper. Okay. Which it is. So for example, I go to a bookstore and I buy a book with a credit card. I say I get the book. Well, the merchant, the retailer has this receivable. And so they sell it to what's called a merchant acquirer. Merchant acquirers are finance businesses that buy a whole bunch of receivables from a whole bunch of little retailers or even larger retailers. They then take that bundle of receivables, now we're talking hundreds of millions or more, and they deliver it to MasterCard or Visa, and then they get paid. Obviously, they make a little money on that. MasterCard and Visa then send those receivables to the banks that issue the credit cards, and then the bank sends me a bill and I pay the bill. So think about that. I buy a book, but you get 5 financial intermediaries. You get me, the retailer, the merchant acquirer, MasterCard or Visa, and the issuing bank. And the total fees are, like 2.5%, 3%. So why do we need 5 financial intermediaries with, let's say, 3% fees to buy a book when you can just have an account at the Fed and everything whips through the Fed, fast and easy and inexpensive? But let's assume the banks continue to play a role because the Fed's job, people talk about, it's the Fed's job, reduce unemployment, squash inflation. Now they want a Green New Deal. The Fed's supposed to make sure that nobody lends money to ExxonMobil, even though we're out of oil. Those are like ancillary. The Fed's main job from the beginning, from 1913, really 1907 onward, is to prop up the banks. Like that's why they're there. So I doubt they'll disintermediate the banks. But either way, you're going to have a faster, cheaper, better system for making payments. But what else? And this is the key, and this is why we're sounding the alarm a little bit on Executive Order 14067. So once it's digital, a couple things. First of all, they know your whereabouts. Now, they already know your whereabouts from your iPhone, unless you turn your iPhone off, and not just turn it off, but put it in what's called a Faraday sac, which is a special woven fabric, a metallic weave that blocks radiation. And by the way, do the same thing with your EasyPass and a bunch of other stuff. But unless you do that, then they know where you are for your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever. So they already know your whereabouts. We have facial recognition software. People go, I'm going to wear a mask and sunglasses and pull my hat down. Okay. They have what's called gait recognition software, GAIT, meaning how you walk. Believe it or not, everybody walks slightly differently. And it's like a fingerprint. So even if you're wearing a mask, they see you walking down the street. They're like, that's Kim or that's Robert or Jim or as the case may be. So they already know a lot and they know your whereabouts. But now they're going to know what you're buying, right? Because every product has a SKU. They're going to know what you're buying. And this digital currency is programmable, meaning they can block certain purchases or not. So let's say you donate money to Elise Stefanik. She's an up-and-coming Republican leadership in upstate district in New York, or I mean, help you if you donate money to Donald Trump. They'll know that, first of all. And you might find that your account's frozen. Or let's say they want to see right now, if you work and you're an employee, it's a technical term defined, and you get paid and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, but they withhold it from your payment. You get paid every 2 weeks or whatever. They withhold taxes from your wages, and then you file your W-2, file your tax return, you reconcile, and maybe you get a refund, maybe a little bit, but they got the money up front through withholding. But that's not true for independent contractors and professionals, so doctors, lawyers, architects, landscaping store. Anybody who's not a W-2 employee doesn't have withholding. They got to pay their taxes. But what if they could just take it out of your bank account? It's like, okay, you're a doctor, but you put the money in this bank and I'm just going to take some number, 20% out of your bank account every month. And yeah, we'll send you a statement, 1099, file your tax return. And, you owe or you get a refund, but no more honor system, in other words, and no more waiting until year end. We're going to take it out of your bank account. Or what if, as a form of stimulus, even though it's not stimulus, but they'll call it that, they say you get money in your bank account. Okay, but we're going to put a countdown clock on your bank account. And if you don't spend 10% of it in the next 30 days, we're going to deduct, that much. So in other words, use it or lose it. So now all of a sudden, I worked hard. I made this money. It's in the bank, but you're telling me if I don't spend it, I'm going to lose it anyway. So I might as well go spend it. And of course, the idea is to stimulate the economy. But the point is the number of things you can do, from surveillance to identifying your political preferences, withholding taxes, account freezes, account seizures, time limitations on your money. Your money's a countdown clock. It expires after a certain period of time, etc. I could go on and on, but you take the point, which is it's not your money anymore. I've always said to people, you put your money in the bank, it's not your money, it's the bank's money, and they'll give it to you if they feel like it. Well, this is that same idea on stilts. And this is like, and now the government's involved, and everything easier, faster, cheaper about payments is also easier, faster, cheaper about surveillance, confiscation, account freezes, etc. And then people say to me, they explain what I just said to you guys, and they say, well, that'll never happen. It's already happening. I mean, it's already here. Talk to the Freedom Convoy in Canada, what my neo-fascist friend Chrystia Freeland, who's the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, did to the Freedom Convoy. Now, okay, they pulled into Ottawa in the middle of winter, and they stalled traffic. All Trudeau had to do was come out, say, who are your leaders, meet with them, hear their demands, give them a few, not all. They would all go home, and that would be the end of it. He didn't do that. He went into hiding. He's sort of a coward. He's not very smart. Chrystia Freeland is a tough cookie, to put it in polite terms. She called the banks in Canada. Now, the difference between Canada and the U.S., they only have 5 big banks. We've got like 5,000 or something. She called the banks, identified the bank accounts of the truckers, and froze all their accounts. She didn't stop there. She then called the crypto exchanges, got their names, froze their crypto accounts, seized their trucks. They couldn't feed their family. They were put in jail, held without bail, literally couldn't feed their family in the middle of winter, all because of a non-violent protest. I want to emphasize there was no violence. Annoying. Give them a traffic citation for blowing your horn at 3 a.m, $500 fine, appear in court, whatever. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been any accountability, but being held in jail without bail, where all of your money's been frozen, your assets have been seized, they're non-returnable, and you can't feed your family for what, a non-violent protest? And that's an exercise in fascism. But my point is, they did it all through digital banking systems and cryptocurrency systems. And they're doing it in China. They have what's called a social credit score. You take a train to go to a protest, okay? There are many runs on the bank. There's a group in China informing, don't pay your mortgages. In China, it's a little different, because here, the builder builds a house, a buyer comes along, buys the house, gets a mortgage, pays the mortgage, but they get the house. In China, you take out your mortgage before the house is built, and then you owe the money, but the down payment and the mortgage money is used by the builder to build the house, and you move in like a year or two later, but you're already on the hook for the mortgage, except that the developer stole the money and didn't finish the houses. But the banks are saying you got to pay the mortgage, and people are saying no. So people are traveling around China to join these protests, but in China you have a social credit score. They identify you through the banking system and then turn off your ability to buy a train ticket or a plane ticket. Wow. And then it goes on from there. If you post something, the worst thing you do in China is compare Chairman Xi to Winnie the Pooh. He kind of looks like Winnie the Pooh. So, if you post a Winnie the Pooh meme or something, good luck getting your kids into school. Good luck getting health care for yourself, etc. So my point is, this is already being done. And then people say it'll never happen here. Why not? Show me something that was really poorly done abroad that isn't being done here sooner than later, particularly with the Biden administration. So I'll leave it at that. But this is more than just a digital currency. This is more than just convenience and cost savings, which it is. That's how they sell it. This gives them total surveillance, total control. It's the ultimate realization of the total surveillance state. And just look at what they did to Russia. I don't have to debate the war in Ukraine, but they froze the treasury notes held by the Central Bank of Russia. Well, what's the difference between that and default? Like, why do you buy a treasury note? Well, you buy them because you think the treasury is going to give you your money back and with interest. But when they freeze them, they're like, well, no, actually, we're not giving you your money back. So what's the difference between that and default? I would say there is no difference. So we've kind of already defaulted on treasury notes. Yes, selectively with a political wrapper around it. I get it. And given what's going on in China, Europe, and the U.S. sanctions on Russia, which are tantamount to a default, tell me they're not going to use this digital dollar for political enforcement. And the answer is they will.
So, Jim, this is like George Orwell's Big Brother is watching.
It is. I kind of tell it like it is, so I'm not trying to, temperamentally, I'm an optimist. I do look on the bright side, but I'm also a realist. And so when I see things coming and I understand them and I have a lot of training and experience and all that, I just explain what it is and the audience appreciates that. But I never give a kind of a dire forecast, and I do that all the time without offering some solutions. I think you almost have a responsibility to do that if you're going to paint a picture. So, okay, if they're going to get rid of cash and they're working on it and they're going to put you into a digital dollar and they're working on that, and Executive Order 14067 puts that on a fast track. And if the digital dollar can be used for all the things I described, which it can, surveillance, account freezes, account seizures, putting a countdown clock on your money.